Hello, welcome back to Coffee and Commiseration. This is Kay Steinsip here. Thanks for joining me. I have missed commiserating with you, friends. It's been a crazy week. I definitely started this podcast at the time in my life when I have absolutely the most upheaval I've had in many years, I would say. Even even when Molly passed, obviously it was just paralyzed by grief. Um, but I certainly didn't have this amount of just stuff coming at me all the time. I was just sort of like in my grief world, my grief cocoon there for, a long, long time. So, obviously I'll be in that forever to a certain extent, but I feel like I'm emerging. I feel like a new version of myself is kind of being born and finally kind of taking flight. It's pretty interesting. So I'm going to start by just giving you all an update on what is going on with me and the family and, all the different agenda items we've been talking about on this podcast. And then I'd like to move into a current event type discussion. So I hope you'll stick around with me. So personal updates. So much going on, and it's really I have to believe that Molly is behind these things. They don't make sense to me otherwise. So let me start kind of at the beginning. Um, Although I want to focus on what's happened most in the last week. But as you know, our house was spared during the fires, and we are in a very, very decimated part of the Palisades. So we definitely felt like Molly had a hand in helping to save our house and Leroy, our cat, and it wasn't explainable to us otherwise, given that the fire burned right up to our house on one side and all the way across the back. We felt, I talked to Molly all that night of the fire, and I really just summoned her like, Molly, I need you. This is your mom. I need you. I need you to help us. And when we saw how destroyed our street was, and then all of a sudden our house standing there like normal in what looks like a war zone, uh, it really took our breaths away for sure. Then we everything has just fallen into place in such incredible ways. We immediately went to a small Airbnb that our friend had available, and that was a great help just because we didn't have to really think. We spent one night in a hotel that was really tough. Then we went to a little Airbnb in Venice, and although it was very small for us, we were really happy to just have a place to be. We had five of us in a small two-bedroom. Our au pair was sleeping on the couch. The boys were sharing a small full-size bed. Tiny place, but we were happy to have it, and we were planning to just stay there. Then the place we're in now, on the Venice canals, just literally fell into our laps. A friend of mine who is in my breast cancer group, she had breast cancer too, obviously, and she messaged me and said, I have an appointment to see this place in Venice. And remember, housing is really difficult to find in LA right now. There's a ton of price gouging. It's not supposed to happen, but it is happening everywhere. And there seems to be no enforcement and really no way to even report what's going on, which is so upsetting. But this place where we are now fell into our laps. She asked if we wanted to take her appointment to see it, um, not knowing that we were already just a few minutes from here. And we said, yeah, of course. Um, like I said, we weren't looking because we figured it would be very hard to find a place, and we were just happy to have the small place we had. We came here, we met the landlord who's amazing. Interestingly, for my political friends, the owner of this house was also very involved in the Obama campaign. the first time in 2008, as we were as well. And one of the first campaign events in LA actually happened here at this house that we're renting. So that's pretty cool. So we didn't know that we had all of that in common, but we figured it out. And he's a great, generous, wonderful person who did not gouge and is totally fair and just been, I think we'll be friends long after our stay here. So that happened. Um, we're just here through June and we had to find our next place. And as it happened, because these things just sort of keep falling into place in the most interesting and to me inspiring ways. A friend of mine yesterday said, do you know anyone who wants to rent a place in Santa Monica for a year starting in June? And our lease here also ends in June. And this place is a beautiful home, happens to be a block away from Eli's school where he goes now. One of the saddest things for Eli is he's been so looking forward to being in fourth grade and being able to walk to school at our old house. And now we're really far from school now. I spend 3 hours a day driving these kids to and from school. Between him and mostly it's Nate, who's on the UCLA campus, which makes it, you know, very challenging commute, which, as you all know, is just not for me. I'm doing my best, but yeah, not my skill set. So turns out this place has now kind of fallen into our laps. It's perfect and beautiful and everything we're looking for. And who knows? Hopefully we'll get it. And if we don't, I know something else that we're meant to be in will kind of just come our way. It's sort of the way things are going. So on another note, but related, um, Molly Science Affair Foundation is really taking flight in incredible ways. I'm so excited about it. So when Molly passed, shortly after she passed, my law firm that I was working for, that where I worked for 20 years, asked me if they could help us by setting up a nonprofit foundation for Molly. And we said, of course, we'd welcome that. We really had kind of no idea what was involved and anything, but we knew we wanted, obviously, to do as much as we could to honor Molly and to grow her legacy and to share her with other people and to help other people in honor of Molly. So we said yes. And since that time, we've done a lot of great work. As many of you know, many of you follow us and, support and all of that. Thank you so much. Uh, you can check out our website to see all the amazing things we've done. I'm very proud. Uh, but since the fires, we are needed in a whole new way. There is a real need in the Los Angeles community for us to be a real meaningful support. So one of the first things we did was we established the community room, where every Saturday, anyone who needs help, whatever form of help they need, are encouraged to come to the community room, and anyone who wants to help um, also comes, and we gather together. And it's just great to be together and put faces to names. And unfortunately, I hate that this is the case. And I mention this to encourage you to meet your neighbors, because I thought I knew most of my neighbors. I certainly knew a lot of them, but I'm meeting a lot of them now, post fire, in these community room gatherings. And it makes me wish that I had known them all along. So, you know, maybe say hello to a neighbor this weekend. Um, anyway, so we've been doing that, and it's been great. And as I said, there's just a real need. Um, when we left, when we were in the small Airbnb, the first one, um, I got a call from our partner who does the Team Molly sweatshirts and, apparel stuff that we give away to supporters and people in the community. And they said, we tried to deliver your order, which I had placed months before. I'd forgotten about it pretty much. Um, we tried to deliver to the Palisades and we couldn't deliver. I'm like, yeah. Like, I guess you haven't turned on the news. No one can go to the Palisades. It's on fire. So I said, can you reroute it and bring it to me in Venice? So I was here in Venice. I had nothing of my own. I had literally one outfit, one change of clothes at that point because I was planning to be away from the house for one night. So at that point, this was so early on. I hadn't even, been able to buy anything, and we were really. This was like right after. So I get these boxes, huge boxes of Team Molly sweatshirts, and we have none of our own clothes, but we have hundreds of sweatshirts. So we were all wearing Team Molly sweatshirts, which we love to do anyway, but we were all wearing them out of necessity. So I went and volunteered all day at a clothing drive where they were giving away tons of personal care products and food and clothing and everything to Pasadena, Altadena fire victims as well as Palisades. And uh, I was giving away the sweatshirts. And I mean, it was a cold day that day. People were literally like putting them on because they needed them. They needed the warmth. And it's an example of how we're able to do something very meaningful in a way that we weren't before because there wasn't this type of need um, in our own community. So it's incredible. So to this week. So what happened is, as I said, after the fires, a lot of people started to gather donations. They started to pass them out and distribute them to the community. And then some of them realized, this is a ton of work. It takes a lot of time and organization, and it's storage facility, whatever. It's a lot. So some of them did it for a little while, and then they were like, okay, we have all this stuff and we can't continue to distribute it. So what can we do with all of this? And so separately, different people started to contact me and say, can you use this at the community room? Can you give this out? Can you distribute it? And I said yes, although I only have the community room for 4 hours each Saturday. And I can't store things there because it's used by the community. So other people use it. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to take all this stuff anyway because I will find a home for it. I will, I can use it for Camp Harmony, or I can use it somewhere. I will find a home. Fire victims from throughout the city, I can't let these things go to waste. So I said, yes, let me get them. So I accepted a ton of deliveries. I got a storage facility because I certainly don't have room here. While the place that we are in now is bigger than the first Airbnb, it's still small. The kids still share a bed. It's half the size of our regular house. It's fine for us, and I'm actually kind of happier, I find, in a smaller space, and I just want less stuff in my life in general. So I'm actually this is a good change for me. But anyway, I certainly don't have room to store things here. So I got a storage facility, put all of this stuff in there, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to find a way to do this. Then the very next day, a friend reaches out to me and she says, do you know anyone who wants to possibly take over our lease at a building where we've been working out of? We got another wonderful opportunity to buy a building where we couldn't pass it up, but now we have 11 months remaining on this lease, and it's a great space, but we can't use it. So do you know anyone? And I thought it was just one office at first. And I was like, well, maybe I could use one office um, for the foundation. And I was thinking about all these things I want to do. And so I was like, yeah, why don't I check it out? So I check it out. It turns out it's the whole thing. So it's three offices, a big, reception room. It has a refrigerator. It's a great space, and it's very centrally located in Los Angeles. So it's right off the freeway, right kind of in the middle of the city. So that's great. So I was able to figure out a way to make it happen. So, they were already getting a great rate, and they were offering it to the foundation at half of that. So it's a big step for us, but we can manage. And we now are going to have our own permanent space. And I'm so excited. And it's just crazy how it all came together. Kind of like the thing with our housing. It's like, it's just kind of the pieces are just falling into place in an incredible way. And I say that to tell you that things can completely fall apart and be broken. And still, even when things are so broken, they can reform and become something else that's not what you had in mind, that's not what you wanted necessarily. There are, in my case, very important pieces missing, but what is reforming is also amazing. And I absolutely believe Molly is at work. I just have to believe that, like, all of these different things coming my way at the same time, and then the space coming, and then all these different connections that are being made. I just believe that she's behind it. I believe she's driving all of it. So I feel really buoyed by that. I feel really optimistic, and which sounds weird because this is so not an optimistic time. I'm fully aware of that, but I feel really connected to her and her presence so strongly in all of this. So it's very exciting. I think we will probably go in April 1st. We'll have permanent space where people can come and collect all these amazing clothes, personal care items. I mean, we have tons of great new stuff. It will be there permanently for residents of Altadena and Palisades to come and get what they need. So I'm super excited. I think we're going to use some of this space for legal aid to be able to operate and meet with people who need legal assistance for free in the wake of the fires. So all sorts of things. We're going to bring the community together, and just the possibilities are really endless for the space, and we're just really excited about everything that's coming together. So that's sort of my update. We are in less, I don't know, less inspiring news. Um, I wanted to give you a little update on my whole personal care situation. So I've been going to the gym. I've been, I guess it is inspiring. It's inspiring, yeah, in a different way. Um, but on a personal level. So I've been going to the gym after I drop off Nate, and I'm feeling good. I'm doing some classes, and yeah, it's going well. I'm getting into the habit, and I'm enjoying it. So I feel good about that. I did the semi-glutide medication now twice. I'm going to take the next one on Saturday. So it's just a little injection. I really don't feel any side effects other than um, my appetite is diminished, and then certain things like that I probably shouldn't be having. I just don't have the taste for them as much anymore. Like, wine or sweets, whatever. It's like I pour it and I'm just like, yeah, I really don't want it, or and I tend to get full faster. So yeah, I feel like it's good. I'm doing Zepbound, which my doctor said she thinks is like a wonder drug. So, you know, um some of you wrote to me about this, and like I said, I think there should be no shame in these things. I think we should be open about them and talk about them. So I'm super excited for that, and I will keep you posted. Uh, and oh, I forgot to mention this. I have an interview with Forbes magazine next Tuesday, so they're coming to the Palisades to spend, half the day interviewing me, and we're talking about insurance issues related to the fire, and sort of all the different issues and problems that people are having, and all sorts of things. And we'll show what the area looks like. It's still closed to the public in general, so it's only residents and essential workers that are in the Palisades. So I'll be able to bring them with me and show what's going on and highlight some stories that I think aren't being told about the reality of what some people are dealing with. There are lots of people who can't afford to rebuild. There are lots of people who are having terrible experiences with insurance companies. The California Fair Plan that a lot of people have just doesn't have nearly enough money to pay out the claims that it is required to pay. So that's a huge issue. People with the Fair Plan, are dealing with a program that just doesn't have the money, and they're working on getting it. I think they've secured some of the missing funds that they need, but as I understand it, they still have another billion that they've got to come up with. So all sorts of interesting things going on. I will show you and share my interview. Some people reached out to me in the wake of the fire and asked me to do interviews, and it was just very chaotic, and I didn't want to, I just it wasn't up for it. This one is focused on particular issues and questions related to insurance and things like that. So I like that, rather than it being all about me and my family. I don't really need that kind of attention. So I've had enough of that, as you might imagine. In terms of our tragedy was very public, and I don't necessarily need to make this tragedy public in terms of my own issues. I have USAA, which is a good insurance company, and have a pretty good experience, but I have definitely a feel for the issues in general, and I'm quite involved in different aspects of the recovery in terms of supporting the community. So I'm excited. So stay tuned for that. Nate is deciding on his school. Again, I told you I'm trying to practice the let them theory. I've gotten a little further into that book. I recommend it. Let Them, very good book. I'm listening to the audio, which I have to do now. I love reading, but I find I don't have the time. And even when I do have the time, it's hard. Maybe it's like I have less attention span now, like so many of us do, but it's hard for me to focus on getting through a book these days. So I love audiobooks. I love podcasts. I've been surprised that some people have told me that they're listening to my podcast and they've never listened to a podcast before. And I'm like, really? I listen to podcasts all day. Like, I love podcasts. I listen to them like 3 or 4 a day. So if you're listening to a podcast for the first time, thank you. I hope you are enjoying. I'm happy to have you here. Um, anyway, what was I saying? Where was I? I was talking about books. I was talking about Let Them. Nate, I highly recommend that book. Nate's, in the throes of deciding where he will attend high school. He's inclined to stay where he is. We would like him to, we are strongly urging him to consider a different option. And, definitely thinking about, you know, how to deal with that, and how we told him it's his decision, and so just kind of trying to back off and actually let him have his decision without influencing it. And I'll be the first to admit that I haven't always been successful at that. So that's kind of something we're dealing with. The kids have spring break coming up, and I'm so annoyed because it's 2 weeks for each of them and not a single day of overlap. So I'm going to have a month with the kids, one out of school and the other then out of school. And we can't really take any trips or do anything because, the other one's in school. So that's going to be my life coming up here pretty soon. Every day is a new adventure. So anyway, that's kind of my update. I hope you all are doing well, and I would love to kind of hear from you. I was happy to hear like feedback. A lot of people like the had a lot to say about um, the semaglutide drug and trying to cut back on alcohol. So I love that. Let's talk about those things. I definitely got the sense that there are a lot of us who are kind of grappling with the same issues and working on the same things. So cool. I want to keep talking about those things with you. Um, so next, changing topics, changing gears. I want to before we end today, I thought we could talk a little bit about some current events. And I try very much to I don't know, consider things from all sides and offer different perspectives as well. And I hope on this podcast to have people here who have different points of views and can just have a dialogue together. I think it's really sorely missing and needed. And I notice we're in these online echo chambers. Like I'm on Blue Sky, which is just such a liberal echo chamber, to be honest. And then X has become, which is weird because it used to be the liberal platform, but um, is sort of very whatever, Trumpy right wing people. And it feels like an echo chamber too. And I haven't found anything that kind of isn't like that. Um, but I see why there such vast disagreements, because people are receiving vastly different information, both like the facts and the presentation. Even the news outlets, as you know, um, don't present things in an unbiased way anymore. It's all quite biased. So I hope we can do some of that exploration together here and have some real conversations with real people and kind of cut through some of that noise. So, um, a topic that is being discussed a lot right now is this gentleman, Mahmoud Khalil. And I wanted to talk about it a little bit, not because I think this is the critical issue of the day. I don't. But because I think it raises some issues that are worthy of thinking about and relate to kind of some bigger picture things. So this guy Mahmoud Khalil, as many of you probably already know, um, was here on a student visa, like that he got 2 years ago, to study at Columbia University. He's a Syrian national, and he already received a green card, which is record time to go from student visa to green card in 2 years. I think I've told you I did some pro bono legal work for asylum cases for kids who were coming here, fleeing dangerous, life threatening situations in other countries. And those matters took years, 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 like not 2 years. I'm talking like 4 or 5. They would just sit and they would be dormant for a really long time. Um, and half the time, the associate I had working with me on the case would be gone by the time we got anything further from the government. So these things move so slowly. Our housekeeper, Sylvia, we have her with our family as part of our family for 14 years. We helped her with her own attorney in getting her green card. She just got it this past December, right before Christmas. It was a big gift, and we were all very excited. She's been here for many years, and we've been working on that. So, the fact that he was able to go from student visa to green card in 2 years is unusual. I will say that, and I know that from my own experience. Um, so this has obviously become this huge issue that's being debated and discussed. And of course, it's polarizing, which, everything seems to be. I, um, I have said that, of course, whatever due process this gentleman, Mr. Khalil, is entitled to receive, he should receive, he must receive. And there should be no doubt about that, right? And he is. Granted, of course, the way the Trump administration went about, you know, detaining him, and I don't really know why he's in Louisiana. That seems to me like, if we're talking about cutting wasteful spending, that seems unnecessary to me. I don't know what he's doing down there, other than it's a probably maybe more friendly forum. They're thinking in terms of whatever proceedings they need to have, friendly towards the government, perhaps, than a New York court might be. Although I'm not sure that's even true. I will say that as a Jew, and I know many of my Jewish friends have felt this as well, that the outcry to free this gentleman, who, by the way, I shouldn't even call him a gentleman because he's not. This is a thug. This is a guy who actively supports the terrorist group Hamas, who is on Columbia University campus leading the efforts to occupy buildings, to assault a janitor, to destroy property, to disrupt all of the activities taking place there, to block Jewish students from attending classes, to prevent them from moving freely about the campus, to threaten death to all of the Jews and wish death to America and all of these hideous things. So gentleman is definitely not the right word for him. Um, this dude has been doing all of those things on the Columbia campus. I don't think that this is a person who is deserving of being the hill that like Democrats die on. And I know that, you know, the answer will be, well, okay, they have to, the Trump administration is violating laws, and this, is a free speech issue, et cetera. So what I would say to that is, actually, in terms of violating the laws, the Trump administration's violating the laws left and right every single day in much clearer cut cases. Um, you know, blatantly illegal conduct that violates the Constitution. They're trying to get rid, for example, of birthright citizenship, which is literally in the Constitution. With regard to this matter, I'm not an immigration lawyer, and I'm not practicing law at all anymore, but I've been reading about it. I read a very great analysis about the issue by this attorney named Steve Vladeck, and he explains it, I think, better than anybody else. And he's actually someone who is um, critical of what has happened here. But he explains that there actually is very broad discretion for the Secretary of State to make the determination that someone um, is acting in a manner contrary to the interests of the United States and that their green card should be revoked, essentially. Um, and that's the case. So this is not a situation where this is a clear cut violation of any law. And perhaps the law should be changed, but the law as it exists is vague and gives very broad discretion to Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, to make this type of determination. I'll be very interested to see what comes out of the legal proceedings. I understand that Mr. Khalil has 19 lawyers representing him, which is interesting. A guy who came here on a student visa to study in the United States, who is an operative for Hamas. And we now know, by the way, that these campus protests, if you want to call them that, these sieges of American university campuses, was very professionally orchestrated and paid for. The film October 8th is coming out in AMC theaters this weekend. I strongly urge everyone to see it. And it explores and explains how this explosion of anti-Semitism happened on college campuses, why it happened, and why there was sort of this perfect storm of, on the one hand, you know, professional operatives from hostile foreign countries coming to the US, coming into our universities as students. And at the same time, the within the progressive movement, the far left wing of the Democratic Party, this sort of framework of viewing the world in terms of oppressed versus oppressor. Everyone is, you know, either oppressed or they are an oppressor. This colonialism and occupying occupier sort of framework, which is just not one that, especially in the case of Israel, fits. So those two things kind of come together in a perfect storm, and you have a situation where this explosion of anti-Zionism, which in my view is anti-Semitism, because you can't separate out Israel from Judaism and Jews. There are, of course, Jews who would disagree with me and say, that's not the case. I think, no, the vast majority of the Jewish community does not see it that way. Um, and if you are part of Jewish life in any way, you would understand that Israel is such a central part of the religion, the culture, the practices, the traditions. It's really inseparable. So when you say you're anti-Zionist, you are saying you're against over 95% of the Jews in the world. So obviously, I am troubled by all of these activities, and I don't think that it makes sense. As a lifelong Democrat, I don't think that this is where we should be kind of focusing and creating this huge outcry, especially when we haven't had the same level or even said anything about hostages that have been in captivity for over 500 days, including Americans um, who haven't come home. We're waiting for Idan Alexander. We understand he may be released alive. We have no idea, and we're also expecting to receive corpses of other folks, innocent civilians who were murdered at the hands of Hamas. So these are not. I don't think that this is the hill to die on. And no pun intended. I'm talking about horrible murder. I don't mean to be flip in saying what I just said. I don't think this makes sense because the vast majority of Americans have said they want a stronger border. They want more restrictions on who can come into this country, who can be here. I think most people are not sympathetic to um, those who are calling for the destruction of our country and wreaking havoc on university campuses, on streets, causing hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of property damage, assaulting cops, assaulting janitors. This is just not a sympathetic cause. My friends today couldn't get out of their neighborhood in Westchester, which is near the airport here in Los Angeles, because there was a whole group of Free Palestine people there. And Westchester is a very residential neighborhood. Whole group of Free Palestine people there because there's a UC regent who apparently lives in that area. Um, this is fucking bullshit. Like, what? There's a UC regent. Why are they at his or her home? And why are they disrupting a whole neighborhood on a Friday morning and people can't even leave their homes to get to work and get their kids to school? Um, this is what we've been dealing with now for well over a year. And the vast majority of people, whether regardless of their views on the Middle East and their politics, like people are sick of this. This is not a sympathetic cause. And so when you have the Senate Judiciary Committee using its official X account to say, free Mahmoud Khalil, that sounds to a lot of people like, um, kind of like lionizing this person who is a despicable person who applauds terrorists, who wants to kill all the Jews and wants death to America. You could say, give him due process, make sure we don't infringe on any rights. And, by the way, a green card holder doesn't have the same rights as a US citizen, nor should they. So they could have said that, but they chose to say, release him, free him, like he's some sort of, we're turning this guy into like Luigi Mangione, which is a whole other ridiculous thing. And I will say, just even as a lifelong liberal, it it makes me feel increasingly not at home in the Democratic Party, and I know that many other folks feel that way. And I think we've forgotten that there would be no Civil Rights Act, that Jews were such an instrumental part of the civil rights movement. And many of the lawyers who have fought and are still fighting tooth and nail to guarantee those same rights we're talking about, the constitutional rights and liberties of everyone who's entitled to them, are Jews and we're Jews. So, back in the day, it was Charles Houston. He was called the man who killed Jim Crow, along with Jack Greenberg. Jack Greenberg succeeded Thurgood Marshall as the head of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. Jack, marched with Martin Luther King Jr., um, along with Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, to fight for civil rights for Black Americans. Louis Brandeis, a prominent Zionist, but also on the Supreme Court for 23 years, was extremely progressive. One of the most influential and important Supreme Court justices ever, extremely progressive, and fought for many, many, many of the things that the folks who are screaming hate at Jewish students and Jewish people in general, and going to the home of some UC regent and harassing this person and all of their neighbors, like all of these Jewish lawyers are people who fought tirelessly for the things that Democrats claim that they care about. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, for example, Mark Elias, right now, who has been the leader in fighting the Trump administration's, illegal activities, and still is. His family, were Holocaust survivors. So I think this is kind of being forgotten and overlooked, and it's very important that we don't forget that Jews are a critical, integral part of the Democratic Party. Despite all of the issues this last year, Jews still voted very strongly in favor of Harris, just behind Black voters in terms of the percentage of Jews who voted for Harris. It's like 70% compared to other groups. So we've been there, and the reason why is because the same values that we are taught in Judaism and that we teach our kids are about equal rights for everyone. They're about standing up for the little guy. They're about, um, you know, being a voice for the voiceless, fighting against oppression, repairing the world, tikkun olam. Those are all Jewish values that, of course, automatically lead us to want to be part of all of those efforts. But what's happening is, by being silent about our hostages, and when I say our, I mean our because we have American citizens, and also because the Jewish people are such a tiny, tiny, small group of people. 0.2% of the global population. So what happens to a Jew anywhere happens to a Jew everywhere. And I mean, we see that over and over again, which is why you see Jews here in America, in New York, in Los Angeles, being harassed, being intimidated, being victimized, being violently assaulted just because they're Jews. Jewish restaurants, synagogues, Jewish day schools, like it goes on and on and on. We're constantly the targets of abuse and harassment and, in many cases, violence because we're Jews, not because we have anything to do with Israel. Many of us, I mean, I have been to Israel and I loved it and I hope to go back and I feel a very strong connection. But many Jews haven't. And regardless, whether we have or we haven't, we certainly have no control over whatever Israel is doing, which in my view is defending against genocidal lunatics who have devoted decades and their entire resources and energy and identity to destroying the Jewish state and removing Jews from that part of the world. Even as our au pair said, okay, the Middle East is not for Jews. The Middle East is for Arabs. No problem with Jews. They just don't belong in the Middle East. They don't belong there. And this is false. This is false. But that is a mentality that many many Arabs do have, and certainly these jihadist extremists want to see, you know, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, all the Jews will be gone. So we know that that's the case. And a lot of Americans don't understand this because there's been such a concentrated, well funded effort directed by our enemies, by Iran, by Russia, by our enemies to infiltrate American society, American media, American universities with this propaganda that gives people the false impression that many people have about Israel. But in any event, you know, it's been very difficult for Jews, many of whom, like myself, like my family, we've said we are very critical of Netanyahu and his coalition. but that doesn't matter to people. If you do not accept and agree with their platform, their statements, everything 100%. I mean, I've seen it at UCLA. If you don't take the test and get 100%, they don't want anything to do with you. You're not getting through. They're not talking to you. Or if they do talk to you, they're wishing death and destruction and all horrible things. So, and for them, the test is, do you support any Israel in any capacity? If the answer is yes, if you think the Jewish state should exist, the answer is yes to that question. You're a Zionist and we hate you as much as we hate, somebody like Brandeis, who was a very prominent figure in the Zionist movement. So there's no differentiation there. That's why I said what happens to one Jew happens to all Jews. And those who are trying to kind of make themselves more palatable to people that hate us will never succeed. Ultimately, they'll always just be Jews. So, even the people who tried to comply and get along and be accepted in German society who were Jews, they all ended up in the gas chambers just like everyone else. So that's my view of the situation. It's very telling that progressive voices like AOC say nothing about hostages like Idan Alexander, who's from New Jersey. Um, there are other hostages from Brooklyn. They say nothing about these people, and yet they have everything to say. They're screaming from the rooftops about Mahmoud Khalil, who hates America. And what that says to someone like me is like, especially with the Senate Judiciary Committee using their official platform to say free this person, you know, not qualify that in some way, not a call for justice, but just free this person. When they don't say anything about all of the injustices that have taken place and are taking place, and as I said, this is by no means um, as clear of a violation of the law as many things Donald Trump is doing, including going after law firms like Mark Elias's law firm, where he was a partner for many years, Perkins Coie, a firm I worked with closely for a long time as well. Um, you know, all of these things are happening that are blatantly unlawful. But no, the Democrats are going to pick this hill to die on. And it is inherently one that um, further alienates Jewish Democratic voters because we have felt so alone. We are people who stood up for every marginalized group. We marched. We have done it since the inception of the civil rights movement and all until the present. And only because that's our values. That's what we care about. That's who we are. That's what we want to see in the world. We want to see the world become a better place and to repair the world. However, we've all been shocked and dismayed and disappointed to find that all of the people that we marched with and for have not supported us. And of course, there are some exceptions and they're wonderful, but for the majority have not, and I understand why. Many of them are consuming news and information and TikToks from sources that are irreputable and inaccurate and um, propagandist. So I'm disappointed to see all of this attention around this. I hope this guy, has his legal proceedings. Whatever the outcome is what it is. We knew immigration was going to be a huge issue, and that ICE would be out there rounding people up, and that there would be these efforts to deport people, and there are. A young girl with a brain tumor, has been affected in a terrible way by this, and not getting nearly the amount of attention as this dude, Khalil. So we knew this was going to happen, and that there would be a strong opposition to it. But of course, we we've chosen this person who calls for death to the Jews and death to America to be the poster child of, the progressive wing of the party. And I do feel like there is this sort of lionizing and making this guy into this sympathetic figure with his 8 month pregnant wife. Nobody told him to come here on a student visa and engage in all of these activities supporting a terrorist group. And while he has a pregnant wife running around Columbia's campus, distributing Hamas propaganda, occupying buildings, destroying property. This guy's completely lawless. So, let all of that information be evaluated by the courts and let the decision be made. But the fact that, this has become a rallying cry on the left is further indication for many of us Jews, including myself, that this party doesn't support us. And I would never be at home I've never been a Republican. I'm a lifelong Democrat. I would certainly never be at home with Trumpism or MAGA at all. Um, the Democrats are alienating huge numbers of Jews, and I think it's dangerous for the party. I think it is. I think it is very off-putting to the majority of Americans who support Israel, and regardless of their views on the Middle East, do not want this kind of chaos on our university campuses, on our streets. What's more shocking to me is that it was allowed to continue the way it has for over a year, in total bedlam on these campuses. And I've seen it up close and personal on the UCLA campus, and it is, to me, far more shocking than what has happened to Khalil. So those are my thoughts on that. I'd love to know your thoughts as well. Um, and if you want to present another side to the argument, be glad to have you come and join me, and we can talk about it. I'm all for, obviously, for free speech, and I'm all for due process, but I know that there are limits, and the law is what it is. And, unfortunately, we've now got an administration in there that is going to be very aggressive in wielding power. And I think where we should be focused as a party is on the excessive and unlawful and unconstitutional power grab that Donald Trump is doing on a daily basis, including, what's happening with the budget and whether Democrats are supporting that or opposing that. My view, they should all be opposing it. I am disappointed to see Chuck Schumer out there, doing everything he's doing. I think we need younger, being ageist, but I think we need younger, powerful, um, fighters, to be honest, because that's what we have on the other side. Not necessarily the younger, but we've got people who are willing to fight tooth and nail, and we're going to have to match that energy. We're going to have to come with the same level of just pure, like, strength and willingness to do whatever it takes and to really go to the mat if we have to, and we do have to. So I would give them zero cooperation, and I would give them nothing but fight. And that's what I want to see. And I think these are the things that are essential, and essential to be talking about the fact that the economy is not getting better, it's getting worse. And all of the things that people thought they were going to be getting in a second Trump term, they're not getting. I think that's where we should be focused, and directing us onto this other issue and making it a topic of constant discussion and further alienating a very important block of the Democratic Party, to me, is a mistake and will only lead us to have more and more and more elections where folks like Trump are winning. So that's my thought. Anyway, I will leave it at that. And I thank you if you have stayed with me. I hope it's been an interesting conversation for you. And I hope you have a great weekend. And I can't wait to commiserate with you again soon. Thank you.